Hi, my name's Mike Loftin, and I'm a non-resident fellow at the Urban Institute and the CEO of Homewise, which is a nonprofit social enterprise based in New Mexico that has been working for 30 years to increase access to home ownership. Today, joining me is Kristin Siglin, the Vice President of Policy and Partnerships at the National Community Stabilization Trust. We appreciate you being here, Chris. And we're going to talk today about Chris's work in the stabilization trust work in stabilizing neighborhoods and revitalizing neighborhoods, as well as increase access to home ownership for people of color and people who have been left behind. So, Chris, I thought it might be good to just maybe we could kick off by you telling us more about your work at the National Community Stabilization Trust, and I know you worked with the Home Ownership Alliance as well. And tell us about what you're doing to advocate for policies that promote home ownership.
Well, hi, Mike. Thanks for inviting me. And the National Community Stabilization Trust builds healthy neighborhoods through affordable home ownership. And we were set up during the last financial crisis to facilitate the transfer of foreclosed homes to responsible nonprofits who would then sell them to homeowners. We work on the problem of vacant, abandoned properties and their impact on blight. So over our history, we've transferred 27,000 homes to nonprofits who then use them for affordable home ownership or responsible rental. So we then amplify that transaction work with policy advocacy, research, and coalition building. And one of the projects we work on that I'm most excited about is the Homeownership Alliance, which is Homewise is a member with 20 other nonprofit developers and lenders that help families access affordable homeownership.
Right. Now that's great, and the history of the organization is you were a really important response to the foreclosure crisis, which is we're in a different environment now, right? Home prices are increasing in many parts of the country. There's still disinvestment happening in other parts of the country. How are you thinking about this work today? Like what it's shifted, right?
Right. New problems require new tools. So we still are grounded in the work to help neighborhoods and use affordable homeownership as a means to help families build assets both for themselves and to help communities. But as you said, the times have changed, and now there are new challenges like competition with investors who are snapping up homes and elbowing owner occupants out of the way. We need to find new ways to help families be able to compete in the market, because home ownership is still the best way for families to build assets and to get rid of the racial wealth gap in our country.
Yeah, it's a very disturbing thing that you mentioned here, right? Of that, like here we're coming to terms. I think the country is that, the home ownership rate for African American households is the same as it was in 1968.
Yeah,
it's actually a worse gap than in 1968 because white home ownership rates have increased since then. So we have this huge problem of this wealth gap driven by the home ownership gap. And you have all these single-family homes, and as you know, the majority of housing in America is single-family homes. You have all these single-family homes now that are being bought by investors and be turned into rental housing, when what we really need to be doing is increasing home ownership, especially for people of color.
Yeah, and single-family homes becoming an asset class and a commodity that's traded just like bonds and other financial products, has brought capital into the market and gotten homes repaired, but it has these really deleterious effects on the ability of families who can't compete with a cash investor. Someone comes in and offers you, I can close immediately, I can give you cash. People take that offer rather than maybe a homeowner who has to wait for an FHA mortgage to go through. So there's a whole range of tools that are needed to help families be better able to compete in this housing market.
So what do you do? What do you do about that? What's the role of the nonprofit sector that could help level that playing field so that those homes do become available for people who are trying to get ahead?
Yeah, it's Like most problems that are really substantial, really severe and substantial, I mean, the fact that the racial wealth gap, the gap in home ownership between Black and white families is, as you said, exactly where it was when segregation was legal prior to the passage of the Fair Housing Act. That is an amazing fact that needs to be more widely understood. So we need to do something about that.
Right.
72% of white families own their homes, 42% of Black families own their homes. So something that's as severe and persistent over time as this needs a variety of solutions. It's not like there's one simple, easy thing we can do. And nonprofits have a huge role to play in kind of helping be the stewards of responsible, safe, sustainable homeownership. Nonprofits who have a mission to help families and stabilize communities can do a variety of things that help. And all these things need, it's not like there's one magic thing. We need to expand access to credit. Families need mortgages on safe, fair, sustainable terms. The lending work that Homewise and other Homeownership Alliance members does is really helpful with that. Homebuyer education and counseling, working with families to improve their credit score, to make sure that they're buying the right home that works for their needs. Increasing in some markets, we've got to increase the supply of affordable repaired homes because it's really challenging for a family to take on the repair of a really dilapidated home. So that nonprofits have an important role to play as a developer to fix up the homes and work with the contractors. That's a difficult business. Fair housing enforcement is a piece of it. We still have discrimination in appraisals, lending, and home buying and selling, and that's part of it. Access to down payment assistance is another piece of it. And then there are markets where it costs, this is an issue that's a particularly concern of the neighborhood of NCST, is there's markets where it costs more to get a home in good repair than the home can be sold for. So that's the recipe for blight right there. Because if it costs you $150,000 to fix up a home, but you can only sell it for $95,000, nobody in the private market will do that, and lenders won't make mortgages on those homes. So that's why you see the blight you see in distressed neighborhoods. And so there's a variety of policy tools that I'm working on right now that help with that. One is a tax credit administered by the states that could fill that valuation gap so that you would get the $30,000 you need so that the family is able to qualify for a mortgage.
Right. Yes. So it sounds like a huge part of this issue is, there's just not there's not enough resources going in to increase access to home ownership and address all those kind of barriers that you described, right? There's one that there's lots of families that they don't have family that can help them out with the down payment. So someone needs to step into that role. You got this valuation gap problem in other communities. So you got a bunch. So you need like a diverse set of resources that kind of can address those diverse set of challenges. What do you see looking forward, and what are you hopeful about? What are you optimistic? What are you excited about that might happen at the state, local, or federal levels? And what are you worried about?
Well, I mean, the first step in solving any problem is to recognize what it is. So I'm encouraged by the amount of understanding, research, press, discussion about how consequential the Black-white homeownership gap is in driving inequality. So that's always the good first step. And then the next step is to both figure out how you use existing tools better and you create new tools. So as we were talking about, there's a variety of things that need to be done to help families access affordable home ownership. And the Homeownership Alliance has a set of policy recommendations about improving existing programs to make it easier for them to support affordable homeownership and do the variety of things you need to do, both repairing the homes, giving families down payment assistance, and making loans on fair terms. All those things need to happen. There's a group of existing programs that need to be improved. And then there's new tools to help scale up this work, because there's these bright spots across the country of organizations like Homewise that are doing wonderful work with families to help them access affordable home ownership. But those bright spots need to be it needs to be a big glare of light and at a sufficient scale to really address the problem. And so that I'm optimistic that the Build Back Better legislation, which is currently pending before Congress, has a lot of resources that can be used on affordable home ownership. So I'm hopeful if that bill passes, and then if the various programs that address these challenges with lending, with down payment assistance, with the housing supply, if all of those things happen, we really might have a chance of actually chipping away at this.
I think you put it really well, that there are these bright spots out there, and there's people doing really good work in a nonprofit sector. There's a bunch of groups doing stuff all over the country. It's just not at scale. We don't have a robust delivery system to do it at the level that it needs to be done. So that takes investment and hard work, but it's not. I don't think it's rocket science, right? I think we know a lot of what we need to do. We just have to scale it and do more of it.
Yeah, it's not a question like, oh my goodness, this is a great mystery, we don't know what to do about it. It really is that we need to build on successes that are working now, and just it needs to be a much larger scale so that over time that gap is steadily narrowed.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I appreciate you taking time today, Chris. This has been a great conversation, and we should do it again.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye, Mike.
Okay, all right, thanks. Bye.